Good afternoon. I'm Jordan Hyatt, and I'm incredibly excited to welcome the Mini John Cooper Works race team. We've got three quick speakers that will address you all, and then we'll have time for Q&A. And then, of course, you'll be able to climb inside the mini race car and take a look around the brand new Clubman. So with that, I'd like to introduce Patrick McKenna. Patrick serves as the head of product planning and motoring events for Mini USA. He's responsible for determining the optimal retail volume, pricing, model mix, engine mix, alternative fuel variants for present and future Mini models in the US. Before coming to Mini, Patrick actually worked at BMW North America as the head of marketing and communications and consumer events, and his favorite ride is the Mini John Cooper Works hardtop. Welcome, Patrick.
Thank you. Good to be here. So before we start talking about the race team, I just wanted to give a brief kind of prerequisite course, which is the history of Mini 101, but we'll do it in a brief amount of time. But it really underscores why the racing story for us is really so interesting. So this is a historical picture. Who wants to guess what this is? And I'll give you a hint. It was 60 years ago. Not to the day, but roughly 60 years ago.
World War II fuel racing.
You mentioned one word that was right. It has to do with fuel. Anyone else?
Fuel shortage.
Yeah, which one?
That one.
That one. Excellent. Suez oil crisis, which I now know more about than I ever did after history class. But there was an oil crisis in 1956. There was a shortage, which is hard to believe because gas is now under $2 a gallon, which is really mind-blowing. But the Suez oil crisis led to shortages, as you see here, and it led to a change in different vehicles being offered in the marketplace. Who can tell me which car is a BMW in that screen?
Middle top.
Middle top is right. That's a BMW Isetta. BMW had produced a massive luxury car prior to this and really didn't succeed. So they went and they started building this tiny car, didn't really succeed with that either. Which is ironic because BMW owns Mini in this current day and age. It wasn't until the end of the 1960s that BMW really hit its stride with kind of inventing the sports sedan. So the significance of this is really not for BMW, but it's because these were called German microcars. And the task for the UK British car industry, namely British Motor Corporation, they gave the task to Alec Izagonis, who was a designer at the time, build us a small utilitarian car for the British people. So the equivalent on the German side would have been Volkswagen Beetle. Italy had the Fiat Cinquecento 500. So this was the UK's answer. Let's build a small utility car. Now, if this was not Google, I would still give this plug, I assure you. The amount of information on things like this in YouTube is astounding. Like myself included, I'm much more of a visual person. I'm not really a book reader as much as I love video. That top right frame, that's Alec Izagonis sketching out his ideal idea of a car. And notice the left hand. So he's got his cigarette. We're talking 1950s here, right? So he's got his cigarette out and he's sketching out cars. And I'm gonna do a little impression of him. He says, now this is what everyone else would build. And he says, but that's grotesque. So he sketches out a sedan. He says, we don't want that, that's grotesque. Then he sketches out what is called in design terms a two-box design. So this is basically what we know today as a hatchback. The car on the bottom, very elongated, but it's a hatchback. That's what he envisioned as his perfect car. And those are some of his original sketchings. I know I keep pointing to something you can't see. The bottom sketch is basically his initial rendering of the first Mini. So this gives you an X-ray view of the car. What he did that was so different and it was purely for utility. He turned the engine sideways, so this was the first transverse mounted engine. He was really the first one to do front wheel drive, which is very common nowadays in a mass market car. And for utility, he pushed the wheels all to the corners. Very short overhangs. He pushed the wheels as far out as he could with a very singular purpose. He wanted to have the interior of the car very tall and as much space as possible. Now, Lewis will tell you in a few minutes why those wheels at the corners were so important. So he set out to build a utility car, and he even said in one of these documentaries, "Never in my wildest dreams," I won't do the British impression again for your benefit. "Never in my wildest dreams," all right, I will. "Never in my wildest dreams did I ever picture it as a race car." And that's true. He built it to be a utility car. Now, there was a guy at the time, John Cooper, who was building the most famous race cars of his day. So he was building Formula One race cars, so the highest form of motor racing. And that's literally what one of his cars looked like at the time. So that was quite a while ago. John Cooper and Alec Izagonis were good friends. And you know that the name Mini Cooper is kind of inextricably linked now. This friendship lent itself to basically John Cooper driving the car, and he decided, this is a fantastic car. This car needs to be souped up. We need bigger engines, bigger brakes. These can be race cars. And he drew that impression also from sharing the car with a guy who was the chief engineer for Ferrari. So the chief engineer for Ferrari took the car out on the Monza racetrack in Italy, was blown away by the car. So John Cooper now, he starts to create race cars from it. And this little car, this little mini car, which was a utility car, is now becoming a famous race car. So it raced against some of the biggest, fastest, most expensive cars in the world at Monte Carlo. So in Monaco, which is a really tricky circuit because it has so many turns. So the big expensive cars would go very fast on the straight parts, and then the Mini would come up the side and go right around the bend, almost go inside the curve around the big expensive race cars. And it ended up winning the Monte Carlo Grand Prix multiple times. So it's the ultimate underdog story. And that underdog story continues today. So we have with us Lewis and Derek, and they're gonna tell you more about it, but that underdog story definitely still exists. What I love about this small picture on your bottom right, it's Mini out in front. We're racing against Porsches. We're racing against Big Brother BMW. We're racing against, there's even a Mercedes in the pack. So that underdog spirit is still alive and well at Mini. Lewis is an underdog himself, and he's gonna tell you more. So I'm gonna hand it back to Jordan to do a quick intro for Lewis.
Great, thank you, Patrick. So next up, I'd like to introduce Lewis. He became the owner of Mini John Cooper Works race team in December 2014. He builds, prepares, operates, and manages the team, which competes in this is a mouthful, the Continental Tires Sports Car Challenge Street Tuner Class IMSA series. Lewis has a long history in racing, but I was particularly interested to find out that he's a graduate of the Chilean Air Force Academy. Welcome, Lewis.
Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, that's me. It started 47 years ago. My parents immigrated here from Chile, and so I'm first generation American. And I always had a passion for race cars. I grew up as far as I can remember. And my dad, and that's my uncle there, we were Mini owners, and we raced the Minis in South America. As a teenager, I grew up preparing them with my dad and my uncle, and we were very successful at it. So I grew up with the brand, and my passion was cars, becoming a race car driver at some point, which I still attempt to do. It's part of my bucket list. And in racing, it's quite expensive, so I didn't come from a family with money or the financial support to do it. So every opportunity I had, I find myself in somebody's race car trying to drive. That's Australia. I was in the Chilean Air Force Academy. I have dual nationality. I was born in the US, but I did most of my teenage years back in South America. And that's not the Chilean Air Force plane. You know, that's actually in Australia on one of our races that I had several friends. I've been very fortunate to travel the world chasing my dream of racing. And I worked early on as a kid, learned the mechanics side of things with my dad, and moved on to, as I was having difficulty driving because of the cost, I found myself turning a wrench. And I went to dealerships and I worked for a long time through the 90s. And in the late 90s, I decided that if I can't drive, I'm going to work on race cars. So I worked my way up into, back then it was kart, the Mario Andretti, Alain Surdais, Fittipaldis, and worked for several kart teams. And then it went into Champ Car, which these are pictures from Champ Car. And quickly I became a crew chief. And I continued to work my way up to my dream of racing, driving cars. I luckily had the skill of always being involved with race cars and mechanical, so it was very easy for me, but always looking for the opportunity. And in 2007, racing kind of not very good on your personal life, and I've had 2 divorces, and in my last divorce, I had a child, and I fought for custody and got him. So I quit racing because we traveled so much. And I was living in Indianapolis, which I still live there, the motorsports capital of the world. And if you want to be in racing, that's where you would move to. And I was by myself, no family there, and a 3.5-year-old son. I won custody, which is kind of odd. And I've always been, it's one of those challenges in life that you're always the underdog, right? Everybody told me there's no way you're going to get your son. And I'm like, well, I believe I will. And I've always worked very hard at the small details that give me the opportunities to be able to get, to achieve my dreams. I've never given up on the dreams of driving. Obviously, life gives you a bunch of curveballs and you just have to deal with them. So once I had my son, and slowly I got back into racing. I opened up my own race shop and started subcontracting for professional race teams. There's a picture, we won a Lamborghini race back in the 90s. That's my son there. He's going to be a racer. You know, he's telling me what's wrong with his go-kart. And he had no idea, but he was pretty dead on what he was telling me. So it's pretty cool. So through the years, I wanted to have a race team. I felt like I could do something better, and through my passion, it always connects you with people that have passion for the same thing or whatever they do, and I think in 2013, then in 2014, we came together with Pat, and he believed in my passion for the product, and he trusted me in representing Mini. Mini's not here today to sell cars. They're here because they support me in my dream. And quickly, it was really close to the initial race of the season where I think we had like 30 days. We missed the first race because I only had cars and they weren't prepared. They were street cars, so we had to gut the cars out. And I did that all by myself. I didn't have the funding to be able to hire engineers, and so I found myself in my small little shop at the time taking cars apart and building roll cages, and the car was brand new. It was just released, so there was nothing available for it to go racing, no performance parts. And so we, through some friends and all my other friends that are passionate about racing also, they all helped out. And we created partnerships with companies to build differentials. The car doesn't come with a differential. It's all electronic today. I mean, the modern cars are very, very high tech. They're designed to protect us driving in the city. And we go racing with it. And our biggest challenge for these guys is to be able to convince the car that we're racing, that it has slick tires instead of treaded street tires. and it's not going 60, 70 miles per hour, it's going 130 coming into high braking zones. And so our challenge has been being able to change the street calibration of this modern piece of automobile that it's designed not to go racing. And car companies don't want, they don't want to change that because they're not designed to go racing. So, so through the years, as we were building this, you can see there's a lot of off-road stuff. I've been involved in all kinds of racing, so I'm going to kind of switch over a little bit. But my love is, one of my number one on my bucket list is to drive and compete in the Dakar Rally. I don't know if anybody of you guys know what the Dakar Rally is, but it's basically 2 weeks of off-road racing. So I've found my way, obviously trying to get there through friends that do the same thing. And I've actually raced the score, the Baja 1000, 2 years in a row now, the 14 and 15, and we won the Baja 1000 straight out of the box. As a matter of fact, the first time we won by 10 hours, and the second time we won, I think when we crossed the finish line, second place was 159 miles behind us, and they started 30 seconds ahead of us. But all of that has been with people that have the same desire and fine-tune the small details to be able to be better than the Robbie Gordons and the Bryce Menzies, the superstars of off-road racing. And we try to translate that over to what we do with the Mini. That picture there is me about 3 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday night. My son took the picture because he was with me at the shop. And that was literally, I think, 2 weeks before our first race, and the car was just like bare metal. And the gentleman that I had hired to help me build the roll cages, because I'm not a fabricator, decided to go on vacation. And he told me that, no, there's no way you're going to have 2 cars at the next race. You should just try to finish the one. So I found myself learning how to weld in the middle of the night. And we showed up with 2 cars to our first race. That's my girlfriend. It's been a family affair. I've drugged everybody in my family to help out. And she's actually helping us put the cars back together to get ready for Sebring. And that obviously was the very first picture of our finished product, which we were very proud of. We showed up to our first race in Sebring, Florida. The competition is pretty stiff. There was 30 cars. We never tested the race car until we went on the racetrack for the first time. And actually, we didn't have ECUs for the second car. We only had 1 car running at the moment that we pulled up to the racetrack. And we unloaded the 1 running car and went straight on the racetrack, and we were 18th out of 31 cars, I believe. So we were very proud of all the work that we put in, not knowing, because it was a brand new car. And what was crazy is that same weekend, I didn't even have a team. Like I was hiring people right at the racetrack that I knew, and it's like, hey, we got a second car, we got to finish up. It doesn't have a computer. We haven't even started. It's never even been in first gear. And so I had a bunch of guys, and I was in there trying to put it together, and we finished the car. We got it started literally 20 minutes before qualifying, and we still had to get through technical inspection. You couldn't go on the racetrack without being teched. And the series knew that we were trying to get a second car on track, and they were waiting for us at tech, and the driver was on the other side of tech. We pushed the car through tech. They passed us real quick. The guy got in the car and drove out of pit lane onto the track and took the green flag for qualifying and didn't miss a lap, and qualified 24th out of 31 cars. And that was the first time that car had ever turned, it had ever been in first gear. So there's been a lot of challenges through our way to achieving goals and dreams, and we've been very successful for a new team. We basically put it together at the first racetrack that we went to, and we had been the only team in IMSA that in its first year of that car production to get on the podium. We finished second in our very last race of 2015, right? 15, yeah, we're 16. So it was the last race of the season. Derek and his co-driver, Matt, it was their first time with a team, and I had finished building a third car. And these guys came aboard, and it was at their home track in Atlanta. And we made a few mistakes early on in the race, and we fell 3 laps down. And we were the fastest car in the wet. It was raining, and these guys came from 3 laps down to miss first place by 10 seconds. I mean, we needed a couple more laps to win the race. And and so we were the first car of a new production-based car that had been on the podium. So, you know, we talk about the challenges. We never know what I don't know what I'm doing at times. I'm just winging it, and it's. But we're confident. You know, we have a lot of support from Mini. We have a program with technicians from the dealerships that come, and they're part of our crew. There was a picture there of a bunch of guys. That's our shop today, and you can see we have we pay attention to detail. It's clean. It's almost like a hospital. You can see Wendy there putting a program in a street car that we have that we do testing, because there's not enough time to go test. So we do it on a street car, and we drive it around town at the speed limit. And so these are the things that we continue to do. Just attempting to represent the brand that supports me and my dreams. And like I said, it's a family affair. You can see my boys. We're a blended family. My son is in the green shirt, and Wendy has 3 boys. Her youngest is not there, but they're all at the shop helping every day after school. And we have great drivers that have dreams, and we kind of come together, and it becomes a great chemistry. And we all push forward to overcome the obstacles that racing presents to us. And we're very proud of what we do, and we're racing against teams that have high budgets with a lot of personnel, and we give them a hard time every weekend. We still have goals, and personally, like I said, someday I'm going to get to Dakar, and I'll drive a car, and hopefully it's in a Mini. I love the brand, and it fits my personality. It's never die, never give up. It doesn't matter what happens. There's always a way to overcome a challenge. I've been fortunate enough to be around the world. Like I said, I was just a crew chief also this year at the 100th running of the Indianapolis 500. And they asked me to come and run for Del Coyne Racing with Brian Clausen, who was a driver that just died a few months ago in a sprint car accident. And it was the first time, it was his 3rd attempt, and it was the first time he finished the Indy 500. So I've been fortunate enough to be in very important things to me that helped me continue to push. And I think it was last week, after our last race of the season, you can see I'm in a fire suit, and I drove my race car for the first time at Sebring International. We finished the race in Atlanta Friday. We packed up. We loaded, we drove overnight to Florida, 8 hours, and I got to drive the 73, and there was 3 races there in a different series, and I finished second in 2 and won the last one. So those are the things that I dreamt of doing, and I had to build a race team to be able to be able to afford to drive. I can't afford to drive my own cars, but I had a little weekend there where I can enjoy our cars. And I'm telling you what, the cars are awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Louis. So next we're going to hear a little bit from Derek. Derek is the qualifying driver for the number 73 car that you just saw up on the screen. in the IMSA Continental Sports Car Challenge. Derek began his race career when he was 17 years old, and he's since won divisional and national championships in sports cars and vintage series. Derek has driven for multiple manufacturers, including Mini, Volkswagen, Mazda, Nissan. And despite his deep connection to racing, Derek has a pretty cool life away from the track. He's a successful entrepreneur in the art business, which I'll let him tell you a little bit more about. So welcome, Derek.
Great, thank you. As Lou was saying, I'm the number 73 driver for the LAP Mini JCW F56. It's absolutely a blast to drive the car. I'm just forever grateful to even be on this stage. It's such an iconic brand, even talking about pursuing my dreams, because it's just, it just seems infinite with what's been going on in my life, and I just can't say how much I appreciate being up here. So, you know, I think it's funny because the racing world makes you pursue your dreams. It's one of those things that once you do it, you kind of get stuck into it. You can't ever get out of it. I met Lou last year, or Lewis, sorry, Lou for short. I met Lewis last year at the last race of the season. Our teammate, Mark Pombo, set up a ride between Matt, his brother, and myself to go run at Road Atlanta. It was raining, the cars are fantastic in the rain, and we were able to actually go from the back to the front twice, 2 or 3 times, and then finish on second place. So it was the first podium for Mini in the new series with the new car, and it was just absolute blast. And at that point, we'd already kind of formed a little tight-knit family even in one weekend. We ended up signing on for the 2016 season. And it's kind of just developed in this beautiful thing where it's, you know, the Mini, the manufacturer's there with us. We have Lewis and Rob, Dravko, Tony, and it's just absolutely amazing the stuff that we do on and off the track together. Really been able to develop the car to make it a championship contending car. So, you know, as throughout the year we got faster and faster. By the end of the season, we were a lot of top 5s and podiums and top 10s. We got a pole, which is the photo that keeps on showing up with us putting our hands up, and everybody's really excited. Definitely teared up when we got that pole. You know, I've had a lot of poles in my life, but with this team, it means a lot more. Just there's something about us being gritty and just fighting for everything, and it's really just a fantastic team to be part of. I started racing when I was 17. My parents are artists, so we didn't have money to go racing growing up. So I always tinkered with cars. I built my first car when I was 13. I hung out in my pop's shop all the time. We just built everything we could possibly do. When I was 17, I went racing with my father and our good buddy Rick, and it was like the best drug I ever had. So I just started dedicating every dollar I can make, every hour of my life to racing. Did that for about 7 years. Within those 7 years, I was able to win some national and divisional championships, formula cars, in sports cars, GT cars, different manufacturers. In 2007, I kind of decided to stop pursuing that 100% because my father wanted me to step in with him at our art services company. So we have an art services company, which is like a boutique. It was just a boutique installation and crating company, which since jumping on board with my father and taking over the reins in 2009 has developed into a pretty big company on the East Coast as far as art handling and storage goes. So now we have multiple facilities throughout the East Coast to store artwork. We do some major museum collection moves. We moved the Barnes Foundation in Philadelphia, which is the biggest post-impressionist collection. And we were able to do that successfully, and our growth has just been immense. But I think that growth is because of what I've learned from the racing world. So, you know, with the racing world, you need a great team. So, like, being around folks and knowing that they all click and that they're all working together is it's probably the biggest thing you need, and that's why this team's so important for us. And my team at work and the people that I've been able to partner with at work have just been, they all have that same mentality. So to be able to pick and choose and grow based off of those types of the mentalities that we develop in the racing world almost parlays directly into being an entrepreneur. So our team has grown, not exponentially, but 12 times bigger than we were before. And it's only been, I'll give it 8 years. So we're growing fast, which is great. We we try to follow all the same guidelines that we do with racing, where you just work all night, you wake up and put a smile on your face and go back to racing. It happens a lot at the racetrack. We'll wreck a car or something will happen that we need to fix it overnight, get it fixed, and go back out on the track. Let's picture my son Bo, my 2-year-old, in the race car. It's totally a family environment of what we do. You know, my father's always at the racetrack. My wife comes to the racetrack. My wife actually, amazing human being, takes care of the family and allows me to go racing, allows me to be an entrepreneur, to work the insane hours, and really kind of develop what we have as a family and as a group. You know, I look at this point in my life at 33 years old, I honestly couldn't pursue any more dreams than what I already have. I feel like I've accomplished not everything I want, because I always like to dream further, like Lou does. Yeah, it just grows, and there's not a day that I don't get a smile on my face for what I get to do, and I'm just so lucky to be surrounded by the people that I have in my life. And if you guys need any art stored, I can take care of that. And then if you need me to drive a race car, as long as it's a Mini, I can do that. And just thank you all for having us here.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
So we have some time. We have some mics set up for questions. If anybody has any questions in the crowd, feel free to jump up. Great.
Awesome.
Hey there. Hey, guys.
How's it going?
Thanks for coming. So these cars over here, you haven't mentioned the modifications you've done. Are they stock or not?
Yeah, so the race car, the Clubman is stock. That one's completely stock. 100%. That's brand new. But the race car is basically stock. I mean, the only thing we've actually changed is obviously add the security, the safety items, which is the roll cage and the seats and the seat belts. The brake pads are a performance pad to withstand the high intensity threshold braking for 2.5 hours. And it has some special shocks for tuning setup. But the engine, transmission, the electronics in the car are exactly what comes in the Mini hardtop car. So it's completely stock. We've never even opened an engine.
So have you guys ever had any trouble with the stock engine or the transmission or anything like blowing up on you because it's not made for racing?
Never. As a matter of fact, we've replaced, in 2 of the cars we replaced engines just because we felt like in racing you refresh cars and race cars, and normally
I missed a shift.
You missed a shift. It was like 9,000 RPM, but we didn't change the engine because of that. So during the winter, which we just finished our 2nd season, we are contemplating changing engines just to start the season with new engines and fresh. We have 3 cars. Car 52 has its original engine. It's the only car we haven't changed an engine in. And so it's going on 2 racing seasons, and it runs perfectly. There's really no reason to change it other than we want to make sure. I mean, we are abusing the cars to the max. I mean, you talk about testing a car. This thing is running at 6,000 RPMs for 2.5 hours, braking. I mean, the temperatures of the brakes are at 800 to 1,000 degrees Celsius. I mean, the rotors literally glow. And I don't know, there's a picture there that the car's on 2 wheels. That's very frequent. That happens almost every corner. Yeah. Somebody said we don't cut corners. What do we do? We
jump them.
We jump them. We don't cut corners. We take curves. So anyway, I mean, the car is just completely abused. This looks really pretty here, even though I raced a week ago. I've kind of had to change some bumpers and fenders on it and fix some door handles. These guys do everything they can. There's a picture of one of them. That was a bad day. But
you fix. Here's what's crazy. The car crashes in qualifying. He works all night and puts it back to showroom condition to race the next day. And for that reason, Lewis has a reputation. He won't talk about this. He has a reputation within the race teams as the racer's racer. In other words, like, he's the one they're all rooting for. And because they have so much more resource, they will actually print out all the racing times. They have everyone's racing times. He doesn't have all that analytics because we're a small company. They will hand him and like look around. They'll kind of give it to him under the table because the other teams want him to win. Even though it's competitive, they're all kind of watching, you know, what he's doing.
And to add to that, we're the only team that races the car in stock configuration. So basically the engine, you know, it's stock, transmission stock, the electronics and the ECUs are stock. It's exactly what you drive every day. When you go buy an F56 out of the dealership, that's exactly what you, except for the roll cage and the slick tires, and the shocks. But so we're racing against well-developed production-based cars. Most of the cars have aftermarket racing injection systems and bigger turbos, and we're the only manufacturer, the only race team that runs a car completely stocked. And I don't think that most of the race teams even believe we do that, but we're really proud of that. We're changing racing a little bit.
We have a question on the right.
Just want to say thanks, all you guys, for coming in. Question mostly for Lewis and or Derek, but Pat, you may have interesting stories too. I'm curious about your scariest moment related to racing on or off the track. I'm curious if it's, you know, scarier being on the sidelines, in the car. Yeah.
I mean, I've wadded some cars up pretty good, so there's always that moment right before you hit where you just close your eyes and tuck your feet and just wait to take it. That's probably the scary part. You know, you've kind of given up at that point. But luckily enough with these cars, have never wrecked one. At Daytona, no, I Road America when I lost. There's something got in between our brake pads. And it was a corner that actually Mark Pombo, who had a significant accident there a few years earlier, and came back from a traumatic brain injury from that same exact corner. He was right behind me, and I lost my brakes in that same corner. So my mind went directly to that accident, and luckily we kept it off the walls. Brake came back at the very last second. Whatever got in between the brake pad fell out. Didn't hit the wall, but yeah, that was probably the scariest of the season for me this year. But
just one quick thing that reminds me of. So in racing, so we're the underdogs, right? So we're racing against Porsche Caymans. We're racing against bigger, faster, more expensive cars. They wouldn't let us put bigger brakes on these cars because they thought we would have an unfair advantage.
Yep.
When that started to happening, this is when I called Lewis. I said, we have to get bigger brakes in the cars, and the bigger brakes are from what we call a John Cooper Works edition. So it's our highest performing stock car. But it took these scary experiences for them to finally listen, the sanctioning body, the people who make the rules, to convince them to allow us to put bigger brakes in the car. But I think it's interesting that from their perspective, we have a lot of unfair advantage, which I think I'm proud of, but it drives me crazy.
Well, sure,
sometimes.
because the product, that the car is so good. I mean, I always say this, you can literally drive an F56 out of the dealership and take it racing. And you know, to answer your question, we've been not fortunate because we try not to crash, but we're always on the limit, right? And to be able to compete against the bigger cars, the Porsches, the Audi S3, the BMWs, you know, it takes these guys to be on the very ragged edge of out of control, and either hitting a curb just slightly a mile over, you know, a mile per hour over that threshold, you know, can cost these guys to end up in a tire wall, and it could be pretty severe, like it happened to our teammate a couple of years ago in a different car brand. But yeah, we're always on the limit. So it's good that we don't have that scary moment because we haven't really, you know, exceeded that limit too far where we could get hurt. But yeah, we're always there. These guys are always on the brink of you know, potentially hurting themselves.
Hi. First off, thanks for coming here. I guess you don't see it every day that there's a racing car in your office building.
That's awesome, by the way.
So that's my highlight of the day, or probably of the week. So my question is around teamwork. You said it's a very tight-knit community. It's like a family. Sometimes you have to work nights in order to fix a problem. you rely on each other, you rely on impeccable work. So my question would be, how do you pick a team that works so well together? Because I assume it's not easy to find people like this on the street.
That's really a really good question, because it depends on the passion. You know, I mean, I have a lot of passion for, I want this so badly, and I will spend, my normal days last year when I was building a team was, I literally was on the phone all day long, texting, trying to make things happen, getting reservations, plane reservations. And then at night, I would work all through the night and make sure I was home by 6 a.m. to take my kids to the school. So I just get home at 4:45 a.m., worked all night, take a shower, get dressed, and get my kid out of bed. And I was able, lucky I do my own schedule, so I was able to walk my kid to the bus stop every morning. And then I would go back, have a cup of coffee, and head back to the race shop. And so that's the kind of people we look for. And Pat has a passion for his for the product and what he does, and he trusts because he sees our passion. And Derek, the same thing. He has a passion for driving, and and we're all very family oriented. So that's a very it's very difficult to find that kind of help. But there's not really an answer to it, other than we've been through a couple people, mainly that are there just for a job, or they're there. It's tough to say. I think it happens in any kind of business or sport. There's got to be a little bit of passion for the product because we're representing Mini, and they support us, and so we, like Derek said, we all connected. So the people are still in the team. Either they leave because we work too hard and it's just not fun. and trust me, sometimes it's not fun, but we have such a great chemistry that even when we have a bad day like that's in the picture there, we don't laugh about it. We find a way to fix it, and we'll go have dinner or breakfast the next morning and really be proud of what we've done, and we'll go out there and race again. But yeah, that's it's always difficult unless you have an answer to that.
I don't think there's an answer, but this team, like when we came into the team, we could tell how much passion was in it, right? And I think it's just the people that have the passion rise to the top, and then they stick together. So, we'll be texting with Rob and Lewis all night long. There's with the other drivers, and Dravko, who's our engineer. We're constantly just texting all the time about what's our next step, what are we going to do, are we going to have a car? Like, we're trying to go testing in a week for next season already. So I think it's just having that passion, and as you find people on the team that have that passion, they just kind of rise right up to the top and go with us. So we've been really lucky. There's a core group of people within the team that are just, I think it goes well beyond, it's not work for them. It's just trying to go win. And
it's not work.
Yeah.
It's not work. We're just all living a dream, trying to achieve a goal that we're passionate about, and we all kind of connect.
But it's also agility. I'll just say one quick thing as the guy on the outside looking in. Lewis mentioned this before, but I want to go back to it. At every single race, he has a different pit crew. That pit crew is made up of volunteers from dealerships who are technicians.
Wow.
These technicians show up. He has to train them basically on the spot. Those technicians go back to work so enthusiastic about this brand. So it's totally a win-win. But in terms of the agility you have a different pit crew constantly because of resources, that's what I'm amazed at.
Yeah, and to add to that, I feed off of, like for example, the Olympics. I never watch TV, and if I do, I DVR it, and when I have a minute, I'll watch it. But I would make sure I would go watch the Olympics, and I would get energized watching these athletes that that they practice for 4 years for that one moment, the goal, and even the people that fail, because it's not, maybe for them it's failure that they didn't get a medal, but you just know the sacrifices that they work so hard. So personally, when we have like the technicians that come over, and I think we had over 50 technicians, Tanin, through the year from different dealerships, I hope that they see our passion and what we do with the product, and they will fix your car. If you have a Mini, those guys go back to the dealership, and hopefully they take something out of it, and it's whether paying attention to detail, maybe making sure they fix their customer's car right the first time, because we got to fix the car in time to go racing or practice. So, you know, we hope, I personally hope that they take something and they succeed in their personal life, because that feeds me personally to continue to go.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I think we have time for one or two more quick questions.
We'll make them shorter answers.
Yeah,
Eric.
sure. So Pat, this is for you. First, as a Detroiter, I love seeing cars in here again. But we at Google talk about micro moments and making sure we're connecting with the consumer throughout their entire purchase path. I'm interested in hearing from you. Mini's sort of a challenger brand, and they have obviously moments when they're coming to the racetrack or moments when they're coming into the dealership. How do you continue to have that conversation with them and get really the lifetime equity out of that consumer?
So it really comes down to it's really the culture of the company. So a few years ago when we met Lewis, it's because we wanted to go to that next level of racing and to really compete really in the bigger league. But Tonine, who's in the back, she's at every race, and we have Mini customers come out, and we host all these Mini customers to cheer on this brand. We have an amazing community behind this brand that's more like Harley Davidson. It's like more than any other car company, I think. We have this really devout following. So for them to come out, they cheer on the brand. As we like to say, it's the only car that comes standard with friends. So you know, so people wave to each other. They do kind of geeky things like that. But for us, it's like just it's kind of in our blood. So it's a big part of what we do. So from my perspective, there's just not enough people who know about it. That's part of why we're here today, because we just want more people to kind of engage, but it's pretty damn good.
Yeah, you don't buy a car, you buy a lifestyle.
That's right.
It's literally, it's a different world.
Hi, this is a question for Lewis. You mentioned that you grew up with motorsport and wrenching on cars and learning to drive them, and now it looks like your son is doing the same thing. Do you think it's easier now for young people to get into motorsport, or are we losing interest and our doors starting to get closed off, like you talked about cars being safer and not wanting to be tinkered with?
Yeah, I mean, racing is always a challenge. I mean, first of all, the cost of it is just, it's getting more and more expensive. And that's one of the reasons why we've kind of stayed in the stock stage of it, because if we start, first of all, the car's competitive as it is, but if we wanted to go with a bigger car, there's just, at this moment, there's just no way to be able to afford that. For the younger people to come into it, it's still difficult. Drivers, and are you talking about driving or just turning wrenches?
Side of it. Yeah, you had the picture of your son in the go-kart, so it was obviously a little bit more formulaic the way that was set up.
So for my son, it might be very easy at the end of the day, because obviously we'll give him a car to drive, right? Yeah, I'll give up my chance to drive the car for my son to drive the car. So for the younger aspiring drivers to come in, man, it's difficult. I mean, it takes a lot of money and a lot of support, and I mean, maybe you can help me answer that question, because you go through that more than I do.
Yeah, I think that the racing world has changed. It's much more monetary based than it was before. I mean, it's the same idea that, you know, there's always going to be the best drivers, but now you might have 100 drivers and 20 of them are funded, so the other 80 are gone. So teams are looking for funded drivers, and if you have a funded driver that is also good, you've just knocked everybody else out of the pool. So, you know, going back 50, 60 years ago, if you were a good driver, you got paid to drive, and now it's the other way around. And even in the top series like Formula One, those guys are bringing millions and millions and millions of dollars along with them. So if you don't start out with either the right connection or with a deep pocket, you're not going to get there. So you need skills, connections, and or deep pockets, one of the two.
And that kind of happened to me. I mean, I felt like I had enough talent, and I competed in very small series, and I always won. Just like this past weekend, I took my race cars over and I smoked everybody, and I always did that, and I still can't afford to drive my own race car. So there's a lot of people out there that wanted to be a race car driver that just give up because there's just the financial support is very, very slim. It's so expensive. So I mean, there's a lot of Mario Andretti's out there that never had a chance to drive, for sure. There's not really a trick to getting in.
Back in '07, when I was testing Formula cars, and the recession started. So it was beginning to start, and all the sponsorships started going away. So that's when I went to the family business. It was correlated at the same time, right? So I knew that my opportunity of getting into Formula cars was going out the wayside because I needed the people with the funding to back me. And as soon as they started pulling out of advertising, I knew I had no chance. So that's when I went to business. I said, if I work my tail off, I can actually pay for myself to go racing and then get back into the professional ranks at a later date, But I think that this world that we're in now is talent is only part of it, So.
Thank you.
One more.
I think we have one last question, and then we can give you some time to play around with the cars.
Yeah.
Sure. It sounds like you guys are absolutely pushing these cars to their limits. I was wondering if any of your learnings from the racetrack has actually made it back to HQ to improve the consumer product, and if yes, just one example, because we're short on time.
So the challenge that we have is that it is a stock car. So we actually, Lewis is pretty much on his own in terms of the company doesn't help too much with changing the electronics, but there's definitely learnings that we get from motorsport, like for example the traction control systems, and what we try to do in that is to give enough wheel spin to still make it a fun driving experience, but keep you safe. So there's definitely learnings from the racetrack that we use in terms of the engineering into the cars. But Lewis will tell you that because he's running a stock car, sometimes there's safety features in this car that actually drive him crazy on the track. So for example, like sometimes they'll get bumped in the back, which is very common in racing. This stock car thinks it's been in an accident, so it goes into what's called a safe mode. So then we have to trick the car into going back to like, no, you're a race car. You're not a standard car driving down 9th Avenue in New York City. So Lewis works around all those challenges, but there is definitely learning that comes from it.
Yeah.
Thank you. I have one last closing thought. I want to ask you each to answer this with a one-word response. There's a lot of misperceptions in general in the marketplace about minis. And when you think about Mini in the context of racing, what's one word that comes to mind? Patrick.
Can I make it 3 words? Engineered by BMW.
Okay.
I think a lot of people don't know that.
Adrenaline.
It's just an awesome car. It's just an awesome.
Thank you.